Hello again. I'm Paul Beckwith, and in continuing on the theme from my last video of, climate data, the climate system, how dire it is, what's happening, all of these questions, all of these things. I'm going to talk about some recent talk and papers and discussions on so-called collapsologists or collapseology. So that's the term. I don't know if it's a bit of a tongue twister term, but the title of an op-ed recently in the LA Times just a few days ago was op-ed Collapseologists are warning humanity that business as usual will make the earth uninhabitable. So this idea that earth can become uninhabitable because of abrupt climate change is becoming more and more mainstream these days. And there's more and more scientists who are talking in this sort of language about what the climate system can do to our Earth. In fact, what it is doing to our Earth. So I'm going to discuss some of these things, and then in this video. Okay, so this is the article. Okay, so it just came out January 31st. Okay. Collapseologists or collapseologists are warning humanity that business as usual will make the earth uninhabitable. So hundreds of scientists, writers, and academics from 30 countries sounded a warning to humanity in an open letter published in The Guardian in December. So the question is, an open letter, a warning to humanity. How many warnings to humanity do we have to have before we take strong action? And if you look at the strong action that is being taken and the money that is being talked about being put into fighting climate change in the U.S. since Biden took office on January 20th, it gives us some reason for optimism and hope, although I know many people that have tracked climate change for many, many years are very cynical and saying it's just too late, we can't do anything now, but we have to start somewhere. So at least policymakers, according to these scientists, policymakers and the rest of us must engage openly with the risk of disruption and even collapse of our societies. Okay, we've got to talk about this, and the reason we need to talk about this is because we're trying to avoid it, right? Damage to the climate and environment is the overarching cause of this risk. Researchers in many areas have projected widespread social collapse as a credible scenario this century. Okay, this century could be next year or the year after or in 5 years or 10 years even. Okay, it's not hard to find the collapseology studies that they're talking about. So Future Earth did a report on the sustainability of Earth, and they talked about extreme weather events disrupting global food supplies, causing freshwater shortages, and degrading life-sustaining ecosystems. And these have the potential to impact and amplify one another in ways that might cascade to create global systemic collapse. We really are not a resilient society. If you thought that we were, since the COVID pandemic, maybe you've changed your mind. We're not a resilient society at all. There was a 2019 report from the Breakthrough National Centre for Climate Restoration, which is a think tank in Australia, and they are projecting that a rapidly warming world of depleted resources and mounting pollution would lead to a largely uninhabitable Earth and a breakdown of nations and international order. Reports by the U.S. and British military over the past 2 years have issued similar warnings of climate and environment-driven chaos, talking about climate change as a threat multiplier. Of course, if you're a non-human species, collapse is well underway. Okay, we've lost 99% of the tall grass prairie in North America is gone by one estimate. 96% of the biomass of mammals, okay, the biomass is their weight on the earth, now consists of humans, our pets, and our farm animals, livestock. Nearly 90% of the fish stocks the UN monitors are either fully exploited overexploited, or depleted. We've a multi-year study in Germany. This was in a particular forest region, showed a 76% decline in insect biomass. Okay, the call for public engagement with the unthinkable, the idea of total civilization collapse, is especially germane in this moment of still uncontrolled pandemic, institutional failures, and economic crises in the world's most technologically advanced nations. Not very long ago, it was unthinkable that a virus would shut down nations and that safety nets would be proven so disastrously lacking in resilience. So these international scholars, they didn't exactly say what collapse will look like or when it might happen. But I highly recommend this book here called Our Final Warning, 6 Degrees of Climate Emergency. The author is Mark Linus. Now, he wrote a book. This is a follow-up book. This just came out in 2020, and it follows up onto a previous book he wrote about, I don't know, a decade ago, 6 Degrees. Okay, now I haven't finished reading this, but when I do, I'm going to discuss a lot of things that are in the book in great detail in my videos. Okay, but, Collapseology is more concerned with identifying trends, the dangers, and with them the dangers of everyday civilization, ever-expanding economic growth, huge consumption of resources, and the saturation of the planet's limited repositories for waste. Okay, so lots of people signed this, population ecologists. William Rees, a population ecologist at the UBC, University of British Columbia in Canada. He was best known as the originator of the ecological footprint concept. Okay, with the current footprint of humanity, basically the footprint of the energy and resource entitled global north, it seems that some form of global societal collapse is inevitable, possibly within a decade, certainly within this century. Now, it's not that the entire society collapses, it's death by 1,000 cuts, okay? The weaker countries, the countries that have to spend a lot more of their income on food and that aren't producers themselves, there's going to be huge imbalances in which countries are affected and hit the hardest. And it's arguable that we've already begun this collapse, and many countries that are weaker are being affected extremely strongly in a negative ways right now at the moment. Humans are exploiting natural systems faster than the systems can regenerate. We're financing this growth and development by liquidating biophysical capital essential to its own existence. We're dumping waste at rates beyond nature's assimilative capacity, warming temperatures, plunging biodiversity, worldwide deforestation, and ocean pollution are all important in their own right, but they're all a mere symptom of overshoot. Okay, so, and if you talk about limits of growth, the 1972 book by the Club of Rome people, a team of MIT scientists, did some modeling, and they found that, we're going to be in huge trouble. And they actually said that in the business as usual scenario, collapse would begin slowly in the 2020s and accelerate thereafter. There's been updates to these limits calculations, and that's precisely what's happening. So the hundreds of scholars who signed the letter are intent on quieting hope that ignores preparedness. If we just have hope without action and not preparedness, then it just sets us up for collapse. Okay, we need to prepare. We need to understand the problem that we're heading towards in order to face it and to try to prepare and try to mitigate it, to stop it. Let's look directly into the abyss of collapse and deal with the terrible possibilities of what we see there to make the best of a turbulent future or to avoid it. Okay, so that's the whole point. So this is this is more information on the letter, the warning, a warning on climate and the risk of societal collapse. This is just from December 2020. Okay, and it talked about the not only not only the risk of disruption and collapse of societies, after 5 years failing to reduce emissions in line with the Paris Climate Accord, we must now face the consequences. Different views exist on the location, extent, timing, permanence, and cause of disruptions, but the way modern societies exploit people and nature is a common concern. Only if policymakers begin to discuss this threat of societal collapse might we begin to reduce its likelihood, speed, severity, harm to the most vulnerable and to natures. Armed services already see collapse as an important scenario, and they try to model it out. Surveys show that many people now anticipate societal collapse. Sadly, that is the experience already of many communities in the global south. Okay, but it's not well reported in the media. It's like a topic to avoid in the media. It's mostly absent from civil society and politics. Okay, people who care about environmental and humanitarian issues should not be discouraged from discussing the risks of societal disruption or collapse. Okay, years ago, I just thought, okay, I just got to report what I see, understand the overall climate system and all the interconnected pieces, and just tell people exactly what's going on. And I continue to do that to this day, and will continue to do this, out into the foreseeable future. Some of us believe that a transition to a new society may be possible. Okay, that will require bold action to reduce damage to the climate, nature, and society, including preparations for disruptions to everyday life. Okay, it's also very emotionally challenging to recognize the damage being done and the growing threat to our way of life. Okay, so there's lots of mental health issues on this as well. Okay, because this is really bumming people out, and people feel that they lack agency to do anything about it. And when you lack agency to do anything about something, it makes you feel helpless. Okay, so that's becoming a huge problem. So let's look at some of the reports. So this is a great website, Future Earth. If you go Google futureearth.org, our future on Earth, there's a lot of good information in this report, and you can download the whole report and have a look at it, which I've got right here. And there's loads of stuff in here. It breaks it down into many different categories. So global risk, climate, politics, collapse of political systems, the ocean, forced migration, which is happening more and more often, how the media is dealing with this, biodiversity, finance, food. Food is the biggest one. And there's loads of good information. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I mean, you may have seen these plots here. These are socioeconomic trends, world population, real GDP, foreign direct investment, urban population, energy usage, fertilizer consumption, building large dams, water. They're all spiking up. I mean, curves like this, obviously, exponential growth, they can't keep going like that. And then Earth system trends that are a result of this unchecked growth, out of control, CO2, nitrous oxide, methane, stratospheric ozone loss, surface temperature, ocean acidification, marine fish capture, shrimp aquaculture, nitrogen to coastal zones, which causes dead zones in the ocean, depleted in oxygen, tropical forest loss, domesticated land, terrestrial biosphere. So, all of the markers, all of the metrics are pointing in the wrong way. These are some of the interconnected risks, okay? A whole bunch of, asset bubbles, financial crisis. It covers all aspects of society, basically. Okay, so there's loads of information here. This is different risk types and the likelihood of them occurring, and the impact. Right up here is extreme weather events. Okay, so that's an excellent site. And there's this paper, Existential Climate-Related Security Risk, a Scenario Approach, which is an Australian think tank created, and it's also an excellent paper. Okay, it's also an excellent paper. So there's loads of information out there on existential risks, and we need to take them seriously. Thanks for listening.